From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Manveen Rana. What happens when the world's richest man and the world's most powerful man enter into a public cage fight? Well, it starts with a surprisingly friendly, if bizarre, press conference in the Oval Office.
Elon gave an incredible service. Nobody liked him. And he had to go through the slings and the arrows, which is a shame because he's an incredible patriot.
I wanted to ask quickly, Mr. Musk, is your eye okay? What happened to your eye? I noticed there's a bruise there.
Well, it wasn't. I wasn't anywhere near France, so.
What does that mean?
No,
I didn't notice it. First lady.
But the show of friendliness didn't last long.
Musk launching a long string of posts yesterday. I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination, he writes.
I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate because that's billions and billions of dollars. He hasn't said bad about me personally, but I'm sure that'll be next.
And sure enough, by Thursday,
Musk posted in response to that, quote, "Without me, Trump would have lost the election, Dems would control the House, and Republicans in the Senate would be 51-49. Such ingratitude," he added.
I gotta say.
Yeah, you're gonna say it.
Elon gave us a fun one. Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, DJT.
Now, we should note that there's no evidence to support this claim as things stand. And that tweet encouraged Team Trump to go nuclear.
And now former Trump advisor Steve Bannon is reportedly urging the president to deport Elon Musk.
Any quick reaction on what's going on with Elon Musk and President Trump on Twitter right now?
Oh man, the girls are fighting, aren't they?
Over the weekend, Elon Musk appeared to be pursuing a tactical de-escalation after President Trump threatened to cut off billions of dollars in government grants to Musk's companies. Now, all of this might sound like playground mudslinging, but it's more than a billionaire bust-up. The stakes for everyone, whether we know it or not, are incredibly high. The story today, Trump versus Musk. So firstly, welcome to The Times. I can't really say it from here, but welcome to DC too, I suppose. Would you mind just starting by introducing yourself to our listeners?
I'm Katy. I'm the new Washington editor of The Times and Sunday Times.
Katy, you've arrived in Washington at an extraordinary moment. Just describe what a MAGA DC is like.
Well, the first thing to point out is I don't have anything to compare it to. This is my first time living in Washington, D.C., but you speak to anyone here who's been here for a while, whether they're Democrat, Republican, somewhere in between, and they will say that this is unprecedented. There's nothing like this previously, and Washington looks very different, more polarized. There used to be events where you would get both of the main parties attending them. That's very few and far between to find anything bipartisan these days.
Wow.
And then I also think there's a lot of focus on where the MAGA hotspots are, where you've got lots of young Donald Trump supporters who are in Washington these days, whether as staffers or working, as influencers, perhaps in think tanks too, and where they all congregate. And it does mean that I think there's a real sense that in the past, DC has often been described as quite sleepy, depending on the time, where there is a buzz to this city. Obviously, that buzz is not to everyone's taste, but it definitely feels quite lively at the moment.
And there's clearly no shortage of drama either. I imagine a lot of people are talking about the rather fiery exit from government for Elon Musk last week. Did we know this was coming?
Well, I think ever since Elon Musk embarked on his friendship romance with Donald Trump, there's always been a sense that it was very high stakes. These are two very alpha figures. Donald Trump is used to being surrounded by people who bend to his will. The richest man in the world, Elon Musk, is also someone who is used to people doing what he wants. And therefore, it was a slightly different dynamic in terms of the relationship than some of the previous or other relationships Donald Trump has, even if it was still the case that Donald Trump was the most in charge as president. I think since the election victory for Donald Trump, you saw initially Elon Musk was at his right-hand side. He was in that famous squad photo of Donald Trump and his family. The only non-family member allowed in was Elon Musk and his son. But as I think the hard work or process of governing has got underway, there's been plenty of signs of tension.
So he's announced his departure. What's the official reason that they're giving?
Well, the official reason that Elon Musk left, which was accompanied a week or so ago with a press conference in the Oval Office where all sides were trying to say, this is all planned.
Well, let me say perhaps a few words that this is not the end of Doge, but really the beginning. My time as a special government employee necessarily had to end. It was a limited time thing. It's 134 days, I believe, which ends in a few days. So that, it comes with a time limit. But the Doge team will only grow stronger over time. The Doge influence will only grow stronger. I'd liken it to sort of Buddhism. It's like a way of life.
He was a special government employee, and that means there was a time limit on how long you could be in that role without having some of the ethical obligations, business complications, divesting your interests and so forth if you were to be a permanent employee. So there was always a sense that he would potentially have to step out after an initial couple of months for that reason, unless he wanted to do something different with his businesses. On top of that is a sense that, first off, there are signs that Elon Musk might have liked to stay. Perhaps they could have changed the rules or found some way for him to stay and take that in. And that is where you get to the fact that lots in Donald Trump's team were not particularly happy with Elon Musk. So would he have liked to stay longer than he was able to? That seems to be potentially a yes.
Take us back to that very weird press conference in the Oval Office. For a start, Elon Musk did seem to be sporting a black eye. I assume that didn't come from somebody in the administration. Just give us the official reason for that.
Well, that was the weirdest thing about the press conference to begin with, the fact that it was meant to be this warm farewell with Donald Trump handing that golden key, a P-45 effectively dressed up as a golden key, to the White House. And then you have Musk with a bruised eye. Now, he said that this was the result of his young child. He said they played a game where he'd told his young son to hit him as hard as he could.
Yeah, no, I was just horsing around with little X, and I said, go ahead, punch me in the face, and he did. Turns out even a 5-year-old punching you in the face actually does.
That was X that did?
Yeah.
X could do it.
I think the very fact that within Trump world, plenty of people were joking about, well, was it really your son or was it a member of the administration or a Doge worker you sacked? Oh, a worker that Doge sacked does point to the fact that not everyone was buying it.
He clearly has a lot of enemies very suddenly. Elon Musk has lashed out about this big, beautiful bill. He's even said a bill can either be big or beautiful. What exactly is it that he hates about Trump's spending bill? Why does he think it's an abomination?
What Elon Musk is very worried about is the direction that the US economy is going in. And his fear is that what this bill does is it adds to the national debt. It sees the debt ceiling raised. And therefore, this is a bill which is going to see the US spending beyond its means at a time when you have, senior figures in the US banking world saying the US has to be really careful. It is starting to look a pretty unattractive proposition, perhaps, to, investors and so forth.
Yeah.
And therefore, Elon Musk has been sounding alarm, saying Doge was there to cut spending to improve things, but this bill is going to be increasing spending, and that's a huge issue. Also, there are measures in that bill when it comes to the EV market and electric cars, which are not beneficial for Tesla, which is, of course, the company that Elon Musk runs. You also have increases to defense spending. And then when you look more broadly, at one point there is a push to have, tax raised for millionaires. That's not in it in the end. But there's been a lot of toing and froing still. And I think one of the things that Elon Musk has criticized on this is the sense of being pork barrel politics. So while you will have members of the White House administration say this bill is important for the economy and so forth, they will say, well, actually, is it just a bit of a bung to get the Republican Party to the midterms and then worry about the consequences after in terms of what it's bringing in? I think it's another interesting aspect, which is while Elon Musk is seen as the man who is talking about, cutting spending with Doge, there is pushback in parts of the Trump coalition, particularly from MAGA, who never particularly liked Elon Musk, saying, well, you said you were going to cut $2 trillion initially with Doge. You haven't got anywhere near that. And that's actually meant that, you yourself had contributed by raising expectations that you could cut all this money. And now this bill is going through, and that is worsened by the fact Doge has not made the savings it said it could.
Yeah. All of that came to a head last Thursday when this simmering spat just became a full-on, very public war. Just talk us through that and what it was like watching it unfold in DC.
What was quite extraordinary last week was the fact that they would just have to say everything publicly. So you had the level of vitriol between Elon Musk and Donald Trump just went up and up and up. When you look at what happened that day, it was quite clear that things were bubbling up and they could have exploded because Elon Musk was becoming more and more critical in public of the big, beautiful bill. Then you had Donald Trump meeting with the German Chancellor Merz, and that meant that you have the Q&A session in the Oval Office where journalists can really ask anything, and they go on for quite a long time. And within that, he was, of course, pressed on Elon Musk, and Donald Trump said he was disappointed in what Elon Musk had said. Musk then sees that and then takes, I think, as the president turning on him. He takes the view, well, I was criticizing the bill, not the man, but has he just criticized me? And that's when you start to get this avalanche of tweets from Elon Musk. You had Musk accusing Donald Trump of having sinister reasons for sitting on the Jeffrey Epstein files, obviously denied by the White House. But also, you look at the replies when it comes to Elon Musk, because he replies to so many users on X. And there was one in particular which was saying, do you agree we should impeach the president and bring in J.D. Vance as a replacement? And Elon Musk replies, yes. So all of a sudden, you have these headlines saying Elon Musk wants to impeach Donald Trump, which is less than a week after that press conference where he was given a golden key and Donald Trump said he's welcome back anytime. This is not the end of Elon Musk.
And suddenly it's gone nuclear. I mean, you mentioned the Epstein allegation. That tweet in particular sort of had a sense of a very proud slam dunk to it. He clearly thought this was the tweet that would end Donald J. Trump. Just explain what that tweet was about for people who haven't been across this.
So one of the things that, when it came to Trump's second term, lots of his supporters were very excited about was the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. So, of course, Epstein was found guilty of lots of charges related to sexual offences, was found to have committed suicide in prison. And there are lots of theories amongst the MAGA base that this was not suicide. They say that this was potentially big state or something sinister was going on. And under the Biden administration, they felt as though they did not get to see the full Epstein files, and therefore Donald Trump and his team, because they are sticking it to the establishment and tearing things down, would release it in full. That has not happened yet. And that's been a source of some aggravation and annoyance by some natural Donald Trump supporters. So Elon Musk was saying, well, I'll tell you why this hasn't happened. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. Now, this was seen by Trump allies as really crossing a line. It's interesting that the tweet has since been deleted, which might suggest that Elon Musk thinks he did step too far in doing it. And then you also did have, figures who had worked on the legal case for Epstein coming out and saying Elon Musk's claims are false. But it was clearly, I think, looking at it through the prism of this row, it was Musk's attempt to really say, I have something on the president and, I can use it if he does not treat me with sufficient respect.
And then Donald Trump retaliates by threatening to cut off some of the government contracts and government grants to Elon Musk's companies. What did you make of that? Because for people listening here, the ability to turn on and off, turn the taps on and off for a company like that feels quite close to corruption. How is it going down there?
Well, I think the US system, first off, is just very different than the UK system in terms of how money and politics merge, both in terms of the scale, but also when you look at funding of political parties, it is quite chalk and cheese in terms of what passes here and what passes in the UK. But what it touches on is the fact that Elon Musk companies have many, many government contracts, and it would be actually quite hard to disentangle those, probably for both sides. You also then had Elon Musk saying, oh, well, I'm going to start decommissioning my space program, which the US government hopes to use for, exploration and so forth. So I think it was just probably the main takeaway here was more the reminder, which is they are very merged. So yes, Donald Trump could inflict financial damage on Elon Musk if he wanted to, but also potentially come at a cost to the way that the various parts of government, all future plans for space currently look.
And it did ratchet up very quickly to a point where you knew it'd be hurting both sides, and they did have to row back a bit. You mentioned that Elon Musk seems to have done that by deleting some of his posts. I mean, just tell us about that. Is this sort of a Elon Musk in retreat?
Where things, I think, sit after the initial ratcheting up in the war of words is that you have, I think, seen Elon Musk at least trying to take a step back. Now, there are reports that Elon Musk wanted a phone call with Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was not in the mood to do that on Friday. But certainly, if you just look at Elon Musk's profile right now, he is not tweeting about Donald Trump, and he's actually retweeting J.D. Vance. He is tweeting things that are broadly supportive of the Trump administration and anti-Democrat. And that does suggest that there is an attempt to say, let's all take a breather here because we both have a lot to lose.
Katy, Donald Trump and Elon Musk were always slightly odd bedfellows, and, the Musk view of the world is probably quite different to a lot of MAGAs. Just explain why.
Well, of course, Elon Musk comes into this as a very experienced businessman, someone who doesn't really have much of a taste of politics prior to really getting behind Donald Trump, and who also in the past, like many around Donald Trump now, has expressed questions about whether they actually liked Donald Trump that long ago. He is one of the figures when it came to second-term Donald Trump to look at it differently, and I think that Joe Biden and the Democrats had not done what they wanted and started to see Donald Trump as an answer to some of this. But it has meant that on lots of policy issues, you have a situation whereby they are in different places politically, Elon Musk and the base. So one of the early on rows, just soon after Donald Trump had come in, was about visas and whether you should have visas for talented individuals from outside America so they can work for lots of these companies such as Tesla and others. And Elon Musk successfully, along with a few others, managed to make the case to Donald Trump that, there is a business and there's a good argument and these are good things to have. But that is not where many in the more traditional MAGA Donald Trump base are. And they take a much more America first, anti-immigration and skeptical line and question and what some of these billionaires, particularly billionaires who have moved to the US, do they really understand the agenda here, or do they have their own agenda and they're trying to get Donald Trump to really enact that?
And yet, as you say, when Elon Musk decided Donald Trump was a better candidate than Joe Biden, he really seemed to throw his weight behind him, became, a huge supporter. And I mean, just remind us, you mentioned earlier how he made it into the family album, effectively, made it into pictures where only family was present. Just remind us how big a character he was in the first month or two of the Trump administration.
Huge. I mean, they seemed inseparable to the point that lots of people were saying, is J.D. Vance okay, the vice president of Donald Trump? Because he didn't appear to be really around very much. And instead, if people were saying, oh, is this the real vice president? Some said, is this the real president even, in terms of Elon Musk's reach? And when they were plotting at Mar-a-Lago in that period between the win and when you actually come into office in the US, lots of people were going to Mar-a-Lago. It was very much like a court where you're trying to, see the king, hang around. Will you get a meeting? Can you get into the dining room that night and catch his eye? And Elon Musk, I mean, at the time, just hired one of the cottages on the grounds, used his money to do that and therefore had that proximity. And that raised the eyebrows of some of the advisors around Donald Trump, but Donald Trump at least seemed to like it.
And it was remarkable. Elon Musk was in meetings with world leaders and Donald Trump. He seemed to be in every press conference in the Oval Office. Even his 5-year-old son seemed to be like a regular presence. How was that going down with the staff in the Trump administration?
But I think Susie Wiles is obviously, of course, chief of staff for the second term, was not in the first term. And she gave an interview to Axios just before she really got her role underway, saying that her approach was she didn't have any time for drama. She didn't have time for people who weren't team players, who wanted to make it about them. And then we found out that Elon Musk would not be having an office within the Oval Office White House area, as had been previously claimed. And that was seen as Susie Wiles putting her foot down and actually saying, no, this is going to be disruptive. So we had a sense early on that some of the advisors around Donald Trump saw Elon Musk as a disruptive force and one that they had to manage to the best of their ability without getting in the way of what the president wanted. So he was a regular presence, but there also seemed to be some guardrails in terms of how close he could get to things. And then there was, of course, I think one of the flashpoints was a point when it was reported he was going to the Defense Department to get a briefing on China. And Elon Musk has business interests in China if you look at his business empire. Then we heard reports that he wasn't actually getting a briefing on China and this was all wrong. But that seemed to be a point where perhaps something was in the works and it got stopped. And when you speak to figures in Washington, they see that as a part where perhaps this was when Elon Musk was really on the up. And that's when he started to meet with reality that there was a limit to how much access and how much patronage he would get under President Trump and his team.
And at the same time, we now have a bit more of a window onto what was actually happening in Elon Musk's private life during that period. I mean, just tell us about some of the revelations recently.
Yes, there was a New York Times report recently alleging drug use over a sustained period of time, but particularly saying Elon Musk had taken so much ketamine during the election campaign when he was obviously very visual, appearing at various events. At one point, and almost like dancing or posing on stage behind Donald Trump, that the ketamine had affected his bladder. And of course, Elon Musk has denied this when he was asked about the drug reports in that Oval Office press conference.
There is a New York Times report today that accuses you of blurring the line between...
Is the New York Times, is that the same publication that got a Pulitzer Prize for false reporting on the Russiagate? Is it the same organization?
His response was to say, look at the publication that ran this. I have no time for it. You shouldn't trust it, etc. So there has been pushback. But certainly, I think that this has been seen as a very damaging story for Elon Musk.
Yeah, very tricky. And in terms of his official role, I mean, he was touted as just the man to set up Doge, to make huge cuts in government spending as he had in many of his companies. How has that gone? I mean, how does Donald Trump feel about the task he set Elon Musk and whether he's succeeded?
I think one of the trickiest things for Elon Musk is Doge has not gone the way that it was claimed it would. And they have made savings, they have made cuts, but initially Elon Musk was talking about 2 trillion of savings. Then it was reduced to 1 trillion, and they're still not near that. They're in the billions mark. And if you think about the level of potential US debt, you think about how much the US government spends, that is not significant enough to the degree that it would have this, big impact that was talked about during the election campaign. And Elon Musk has also spoken quite candidly about how it's been harder than he expected. And I think that does touch on the fact he is a business figure who has moved into politics. And politics is a different beast. Politics often requires compromise in a way that I think in business you can be more single-minded. You have to take into account fewer factions in terms of your base, in terms of what the senators, the congressmen, what the Republican Party thinks. And I don't think that Elon Musk has been used to that. And therefore you saw early on these quite, visual Doge raids playing up to almost the pantomime or the theatrics of we're going to tackle, all this extra spending and so forth. And it created a show, but I don't think the net result so far is gone nearly as far as Donald Trump would have liked. And you hear reports that he has said, where are all these figures we talked about? Why haven't we got there yet?
And in the meantime, when it comes to Elon Musk's own business interests, while he was carrying out this work for Doge, supposedly sleeping on cots near the Oval Office to get it done, his companies seem to have been suffering.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk has had a tough time. And it might not be a time that gets much sympathy from people, but he hasn't really had an experience being a political figure before. Obviously, that comes with a lot of criticism. Musk has seen his own personal popularity fall. And then you add to that seems to have had a detrimental effect on his business interests. So Tesla has had a tough time, for example. Some customers now put these stickers on their cars saying, I bought this before, to try and show that this was not bought after Elon Musk became a Trump supporter and started sacking all these government workers. And that's before we even get to Elon Musk's love life, which is very complicated, it seems. Reports of, multiple partners been accused of trying to, have baby farms. Again, there'll be denials to all these things. And therefore, it's been quite a messy couple of months. And I think that, lots of those on his boards or, who have a financial interest in his businesses have not been that happy with how the Musk experiment in government has gone, because it is felt that it has had negative consequences for things that were going pretty well before.
And Katy, ultimately, if this feud continues, how bad might it get? I mean, what does each man stand to lose?
I think it has the potential to be bad for both. I mean, I think probably worse for Elon Musk, at least in the short, medium term, than Donald Trump. But I think there is a feeling amongst some around the pair that this is not really in anyone's interest if they are going to have this very public falling out. And therefore, I think if Elon Musk wants to cause a problem for Donald Trump, that would not potentially even a new party, which has many logistical problems from the side trying to do it. But if you're not funding the Republicans, they don't have that money coming in the way that Elon Musk put so many millions into, helping Donald Trump at the last election, that does make Republicans nervous, particularly if the money starts to go on other candidates who can challenge them. And then I think, of course, potentially Elon Musk speaking on things like the economy doesn't send a good message when they're trying to get people on side with their plans and increase business confidence and so forth. In turn, Donald Trump, I think, has lots of tools at his disposal. Has said if Elon Musk moves his money to the Democrats or starts to do these things, there could be consequences. So I think the president probably always has more tools here in terms of what they can do. And we've already seen Elon Musk suffer as a result in terms of how this looks for his businesses. But certainly you would imagine Musk can do some damage on the way out. And he made a point in one of his comments recently that, well, I've got 40 plus years left in me when it comes to my influence, my power. And Donald Trump has 3.5 years in terms of how much is left of his second term. And of course, unless he changes the rules, he only has this term.
If we're honest with ourselves, Katy, I suppose, this is hugely entertaining, all the mudslinging on both sides. But should we be worried? What sort of an impact might this feud, if it does keep going, what sort of an impact could it have for all of us?
I think that what the feud really gets to is actually, if you take away from some of the pantomime elements, right? It's a question about spending. And do you now have a Republican high spend party and a Democrat high spend party? And where are these fiscally hawkish Republicans? Is there going to be a solution to some of this? And if that coalition and the Trump coalition that brought him into power, which was, a mix of the white working class, those who did not go to, for a university degree, Hispanic voters, there's a real mix here. But then also the Silicon Valley tech bros, the coastal elite were also getting behind Donald Trump, and therefore big business was as well. If that starts to fracture and break down, that's going to have interesting consequences in terms of not just votes, but also what Donald Trump manages to do on the economy and so forth. So I think there's lots of elements if Elon Musk is a sign of the tech world moving against Donald Trump, or if he's a sign of business confidence going, the famous quote that, if you were going to be reborn, you want to be the bond markets because they can come for everyone. I think it's a hint of potentially things going wrong. Of course, if Elon Musk finds a way to start impeachment proceedings and puts money behind that because Donald Trump, that could have huge consequences. Of course, if Donald Trump starts to cancel all these contracts under Elon Musk or take action against him for something we don't know about, that could have consequences. But these are all quite hypothetical because right now it feels as though there's an uneasy truce. How's it going to look in a week's time? If we're being honest, no one knows. I think the problem they've always had is that you can get Elon Musk out of the White House, but he is still going to be a figure. You can't really get rid of Elon Musk. He's not going anywhere just in the sense that he is a presence. He owns X. He owns a social media platform, which lots of the Republican Party and Trump figures use, but also has huge reach and can change the conversation on different issues. You look, for example, even the riots right now in Los Angeles this week, and how X is playing a role in that in terms of shaping the debate. And then you combine that with Elon Musk's extreme wealth, which means that he does have the power of patronage. He has the power to change things in terms of funding. He's just not a figure that can be completely ignored. And that's why there will be some around Donald Trump saying, yes, Elon Musk overstepped, but it's a lose-lose for the Republican Party and, they would argue the country if these two big figures are falling out, because who's going to benefit from that? The Democrats. And I think that's the message that some are trying to land, which is, yes, Elon Musk misstepped. He went too far, particularly with the Epstein comment, but we'll just take a minute, because who is going to be the net loser and the net winner if this continues?
That was Katy Balls, Washington, D.C. editor for The Times and The Sunday Times. You can find her latest column on the Trump-Musk fallout at thetimes.com. We'll put a link to that in the description of this episode. The producer today was Taryn Siegel. The executive producer was Molly Guinness, and sound design and theme composition were by Maula Seto. If you have any thoughts on what you've just heard, or if you want to get in touch with us about anything else, do drop us a line to thestory@thetimes.com. And if you can, do leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow.